Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Hey there, it's Samantha. Now, if you're loving Now You Know, make sure you spread the word. Share this episode or your favorite one with your friends or anyone who needs a dose of women-powered wisdom. Every share helps grow our amazing community of listeners. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It makes a world of difference. Now, let's dive into this week's episode.
Your brother and your sister being in chains will not make this experience on earth acceptable. Your chains will be still held by my chains. And unless I am free, you won't be free.
That's a gripping scene featuring Ashira Darwish from Where Olive Trees Weep. This poignant film delves into the crisis between Israel and Palestine. Through powerful human stories, the film sheds light on the experiences of Palestinians living in the occupied West Bank, revealing the profound trauma they faced long before the current conflict. Drawing from her own experiences, Ashira holds valuable insights that many of us might seek: how to overcome trauma, learn from it, and use those tools to help others. I'm Samantha Johnson, and this is Now You Know, a new series from Al Jazeera dedicated to amplifying women's voices, stories, and topics we're thinking and talking about. This is a safe space where we go all in, so by the end of each episode you can say, "Now I know." Ashira Darwish has worn many hats: journalist, human rights advocate, filmmaker, and trauma therapist. Her diverse experience has allowed her to navigate the complexities of trauma and resilience, and she's here to share it all with us now. So, Ashira, thank you so much for joining us on Now You Know.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
Ashira, I've watched your film, Where Olive Trees Weep, and from beginning to end, you are a captivating storyteller. Now, for those who haven't watched it, I just want you to help us truly understand what your life was like in Palestine.
So I grew up in Jerusalem. That's where my mother is from, and my father is from Egypt. Jerusalem is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And I can say actually it used to be. Right now, under occupation, it's not the most beautiful place to be because there's military presence everywhere. But growing up in the old city and around the old city of Jerusalem meant having lots of bazaars, meant meeting a lot of people. And my childhood dealing with the occupation in the beginning was through the stories. The story of how my grandfather was expelled in 1967 along with all the men in the family. They were kicked out of Jerusalem and they ended up as refugees in Jordan. And having that nostalgia of my mother about the old city of Jerusalem and how my grandparents used to live. And every story when we walk through the old city is always when Sido was here, when Palestine was free. So I knew automatically that we're not living, because what the stories we heard did not come close to the life that we were living. It was only until I grew up a little bit and I was in school in Jerusalem and I got to witness the massacre in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and we had tear gas being dropped inside our school, and we heard shouting from the ma'adin of the Aqsa Mosque calling for people to come, and that people were getting shot and killed in Al-Aqsa. And even then, there was the tear gas, there was the chaos, there was the fear, but I didn't really put it together with the soldiers and the occupation. Everything changed after the signing of the Oslo Accord.
The Oslo Accords were signed between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization. The agreements were seen as a major turning point in the conflict because it was the first time that Israel and the PLO formally recognized one another.
So how did your life change after the Oslo Accords?
It was immediate that everything changed. Before that, all of my friends who live in Ramallah, who live from all over the West Bank, were able to come to Jerusalem. We had the right to travel across Palestine freely. And all of a sudden, when we signed this peace agreement, checkpoints started popping. And I remember the first checkpoint in Al-Ram. And it was very distraught because It was the first time that we had this direct contact with soldiers on a daily basis. And the humiliation started from there. The reality started changing, and it was an immediate feeling that something wrong is happening, because it was supposed to be peace. We were hearing about this peace, but what we were seeing on the ground is they were restricting us already. And then we had in 1996, the protests started happening, and at that point, I was much more aware, and I understood what was going on, and I started getting involved.
So how old were you at the time?
I was around 13, 14. And that was the beginning of the friction. And then we started hearing about the explosions, then the martyr attacks started happening, and there was much more physical expressions of the occupation happening on a daily basis, and the checkpoints and the humiliation, of course, got much stronger. When I was 16 was the first time that I was actually detained by the soldiers, and that changed my whole life.
Can you tell us more about that experience?
They had organized a singing protest, nonviolent, between internationals, Israelis, and Palestinians. And it was to protest the closure of the only Palestinian representative office, the Orient House, in Jerusalem. And I went with her to the protest because I was very much into music. I was studying the Qanun. I wanted to be a musician and a singer. And the moment we arrived, there was a group of people singing, and a lot of the songs were Quaker songs, so I already knew them in English, Kumbaya, my lord. And it felt very safe, and I enjoyed it until the horses started running towards us, and the soldiers and police started running. And I remember people started making a human chain, and I thought I was in the human chain. And I realized that the man that was holding me was an undercover police officer. And I turned around and tried to push him, to tell him, like, we need to run to the group. And he immediately put a police cap, and police and soldiers came from every direction. And I found myself being beaten to the head. I got the first stick on the head, I fainted, and I fell to the ground. And they just kept hitting my knees with sticks, with batons, and I would just lose consciousness and wake up, and there were cameras flashing, and it was just a few minutes, but it was a few minutes that I was looking at the cameras and I was asking for help. I was like, just take me. And then the police came and they took me, and then they took us to the Maskubiya, which is one of the worst. It used to be one of the torture chambers. So I went to the Maskubiya, the Russian compound, and I was taken to interrogation. I started screaming and telling the police, like, they beat me up, they hit me with, and he slapped me. And then he gave me a piece of paper because I had bruises all over me, and he was like, sign that you weren't touched. And I was like, but, and then he lifted, I was like, give me 1 minute, whatever you want. And I signed whatever he had wanted, that, not knowing if that would mean my release or that would mean that a confession and I would stay. And then they released me at the end of the day to, I think it was 28 days that I wasn't allowed to be in the city of Jerusalem.
And that was the moment that changed the trajectory of your life. You wanted to be a singer. Like, singing is your passion. And you sing also in the film, and you have an absolutely stunning, beautiful voice. But you chose to go down the route of journalism. So why did you do that?
The moment I went out of the detention, the only thing I could think of was how angry I was. And I was also angry at the cameras for not helping me. And I thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a journalist, and I'm going to film what they're doing. And I'm going to be the journalist that puts a hand out to try to get somebody out, rather than the journalist who only films. And I thought that that would be my way of helping other people. And also exposing, I had this also very naive thought that journalism was, you know, a way to hold those in power accountable, and that if the world saw what they're doing to the Palestinians, then they would stop it. And here we are, years later, with the most gruesome genocide and nobody's lifting a hand to save the Palestinians. But yeah, I decided not to pursue music anymore, and I decided to study journalism, and that took me on a path of 15 years working as a journalist.
You decided to make another switch from journalism to human rights work. Why did you do that?
I kind of gave up on journalism. It felt like all the time we're working, I worked as a fixer for so many different news channels and organizations, international, local, and I wanted to share these stories. And every time there's an editor at the top, there's a Zionist in control of all the media. Somebody cuts the story and changes it. No matter how hard we try as Palestinian journalists, there was always editing to take out. Israelis get murdered, whereas Palestinians, we die. Even if it's soldiers coming after us, we just randomly die. The title of the stories, and you can see it in the genocide right now, how it's covered. If you say anything about those who are under the boot, then that is biased towards the victim. And my view was, if we are to be the fifth power, then we have to tell the story of those who cannot speak. And those whose story isn't being told. And I thought maybe with human rights, it's going to be a little bit different, and I can help people more, not just report on their stories, but at least give them an outlet that maybe there's a legal option that can be, we have the international courts, we have something. And when I switched to Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, I realized that it was the same thing. There's always somewhere in the top. If you report on anywhere in the world and you investigate stories, you don't get the same scrutiny if you're working on Palestine, Israel. And I used to always jokingly say in the room with the editors, like, by the time you approve apartheid, it's going to be a genocide. And here we are now. By the time the genocide is over, God knows what they're going to have to prove. And we can see that the courts also don't do anything. So I kind of gave up on Western international indoctrination to us, telling us how we should report and what we should say and what is right and what is wrong, because it's all based on white supremacy and it's all based on colonial powers.
So with all your experiences in Palestine, it came with trauma. But when did you actually realize that you were living with trauma?
So in 2011, I was in a protest in Nabi Saleh, and one soldier held me from the scarf and the other kicked my feet, and my neck was broken. And the spine was severed 70%. And I went into a slow process of paralysis from my left side to my whole body. And it was then that I started a journey of physical healing. And it was after being able to walk again and to self-heal and to basically discard also anything that has to do with Western medicine, which said that I can never again walk in my life. And after going back to walking, I realized that there was much more that I need to work on. And I realized when I was in stillness, when I was in paralysis and trying to recover, when I was trying to meditate, that there was so many things in my mind that come and occupy when it comes to sitting down in stillness. And I wanted to work on that. And already somatically, I had problems in my body. And I was like, I can't continue like this. I was also suffering from heavy addiction. I was medicating myself through journalism, through Human Rights Watch, through Amnesty, in order to be able to continue to work. And I went on a journey to Peru. I went on a journey to India. And I started dealing with my mental health. And I realized that healing from paralysis was much easier than actually trying to change the patterns in my brain and dealing with all the problems and the trauma that I had.
Wow.
And I found, luckily, so many holistic approaches, so many indigenous knowledge, and that saved me and guided me in this journey. And after that, I decided I want to share this with the whole world. I want to share it with the Palestinians. I want to share it with the kids who come out of prison, because there was so much out there that we didn't know. There's so much knowledge that's available to us, which connects us, which looks at us as humans rather than just physical machines. I changed from human rights into the healing work.
You established catharsis holistic healing for Palestinian children to help others manage with their trauma as well.
I wanted to share the information, and my teacher, Kiratina Khalsa, may his soul rest in peace, was pushing me to that direction and telling me that this is what you need to do. This is how you can help at this point. And I wanted to work with the kids that I was seeing and living with in Nabi Saleh. And I wanted to work with children who came out of prison, just as that moment changed my life and changed the trajectory of my life. I wanted to be able to give children something that allows them to soothe and allows them to reconnect with themselves and reconnect with their families after the attachment had been broken in prison. And then in Gaza, luckily we were able to work in partnership with an organization there so that we can provide support to children who have undergone trauma from all the wars. And yeah, it just kept on expanding, and also training Palestinians in the modalities of holistic healing. And it's not only holistic, it's also liberation therapy, because much of the Western medicine is about individualizing the trauma and telling each person, trying to deal with every person on an individual level, and looking as if the problem is within us rather than with the experience and the injustice around us. And a lot of it has to do with talking and re-experiencing the trauma over and over. And this works for soldiers who come out of war and go into the peace of their countries and they have some stillness. For us, we never have a post-trauma. We're living under continuous trauma. And unless the trauma collectively is dealt with, there is no way that we can heal. As refugees, you're still, even people who've left their countries for years, and endured war in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Africa, anywhere, they're still not able to deal with the trauma in a Western modality, because the trauma still lives on in their homes, in their countries. They're separated, divided. So healing for the Palestinians means the liberation of Palestine. And then you can look at each and every individual wound and how to work on it.
So what are the methods and the techniques you use in your work?
From all the modalities that helped me physically heal from the paralysis to healing from addiction and trauma and the continuous complex trauma that I have, I've merged it into a modality which is Ashira active meditation. And it's active meditation because it's pretty much about being in motion and healing somatically without having to open the wounds and without having to go into the talk aspect. I think talk therapy has not all talk therapy. Let's say compassionate inquiry is the only one that I prescribe to as a modality, but it's for a later stage when the person has gone through lots of somatic work and when there is stillness and safety for the person to experience and verbalize. But somatically, being able to release the charges, to release the energy that's stuck in the body that creates the illness, is the area that I like to work in. And I use also Sufi meditation because I come from a lineage of Sufis, and I never knew how to. It wasn't in my recent family, but it came to me when I was in need and I was whirling all the time in the house, and it changed my brain. And then I did research about it, and it turns out that it actually affects the prefrontal cortex with the amygdala, and there's electricity going very actively in the prefrontal cortex, and it rewires the brain to allow for reconnecting the brain after trauma. And it's a wonderful way to work with the children and also for adults. And also I integrated Kundalini yoga, and it's all about using the body with sound, because I still have the music, and I want to share the music, and I feel that music is also medicinal. And I did sound healing and sound therapy, and I use the different vibrations, the different sounds, in order to also accelerate healing and also to open the energy points in the body through sound. So it's a mixture of that.
I can't imagine you not using any sort of sound or music or singing in any of your work. I do want to bring up something that you just mentioned about PTSD. So when it comes to Palestinians and trauma. The head of mental health services in Palestine once said, her people do not suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder because their trauma is ongoing. And it's something that is in the film as well. So how can healing begin?
I think the modality that I've created, the idea is we begin immediately, and we begin immediately by releasing the energy in the body, releasing the trauma somatically from the body, because the body is the one that experiences the trauma and holds the trauma. And when you start releasing that, there's much more space to continue on living through trauma. And the sad reality of the work that we do is specifically right at this point when we're experiencing genocide, is we are building the tolerance for trauma. We are building resilience in the brain so that you have more elasticity to move between fight, flight, fawn mode, and to use that fawn mode that I spoke about when you need it, and then to be able to switch it off so that you can go back to making the decisions from a conscious level. And it's about having more tolerance, sadly, to trauma and more resilience to trauma, because we cannot control, sadly, the reality of the bombs dropping on us, but we can control internally how we deal with them and how we stay resilient, and we still withhold also our resistance within us, and we don't lose our light, because a lot of what Israel does in terms of bombing, in terms of fear, in terms of arresting all these children and instilling the seeds of fear and inside our bodies, is that we can at least remove these seeds of fear and anger that they put in us and allow for the light that we have to stay within us, so that we can continue to have the joy in our lives and not to live inside the prison under the genocide with also being occupied internally by them. And when we have the clarity and the joy in the body, then we're also able to see and have more peace inside and outside, even when the bombs are dropping. And faith has a lot to do with this. And faith is what keeps us also resilient.
I just want to know, what does progress look like to you when you're working with these children?
It's seeing them rest at the end of the meditation. So it's very much active meditation. We do a lot of movement. And then after that, when we do the sound healing and the sound therapy, I get to see those children who are unable to sit and settle for a few seconds, lying down and enjoying the frequency, enjoying the waves of energy and appreciating the sound waves. And some of them get to sleep. And I get the calls from the mothers afterwards that the kids got to sleep for the first time in such a long time with rest. And it's having that rest and having to feel that the bodies have released and let go of so much, seeing them move between fight and flight and seeing them able to regulate was beautiful.
And finally, Ashira, what would you like to share with the world about trauma, resilience, and hope?
We can recover from anything. And there's so much more to us than bodies. There's so much in our connection with the environment, with the earth, with the divine source, whatever you have. There's something within us that's magical, and we can self-heal. There's so much that the world doesn't want us to know, because we become such powerful beings when we have awakened to the reality of what we are and how we're all connected in this world. And yeah, even with all the horror that we're seeing, experiencing as Palestinians, we will be able to recover, and we will be able to go back to our joy, and we will not let them, with all the destruction that they have done around the world, we will not let them occupy our minds and souls and hearts. We will still have our dance and our dabke. We will still have our ways to hold together, to be somdin together, mentally, physically, and emotionally. We just have to hold on right now and to stay steadfast. And this wave will pass, and liberation is much closer than it ever was to us. So just hold on.
Ashira Darwish, I appreciate you talking to Now You Know. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So now you know how one Palestinian woman's trauma has transformed into a powerful tool for helping others. And I want to thank Ashira Darwish for sharing her story with us. And of course, a special thanks to you for checking in with Now You Know.